Sil Lay, a young, single mother living in New York. She is one of millions of single mothers living with their children. She's living with her boyfriend, and she starts to realize that he has some temper tantrums occasionally, and she thinks that she can fix them by just loving him more and being more attached to him. Sadly, 40 million other women in the US feel this way, and this is how they get abused. She goes through verbal abuse for years and years and years, and then eventually it turns into physical abuse. This lands her in the emergency room on multiple occasions. She thinks that it's not his fault. She thinks that she just needs to keep loving him more, and she thinks that she is the reason why he's like this, because she is not good enough. But sadly, she is wrong, and it takes 4.5 years for her to realize this. She is with her boyfriend, her abusive boyfriend, for 4.5 years, getting beaten, going to the emergency room, and being yelled at constantly. Sil is one of the lucky ones. 3 women die each day at the hand of a former or current partner. That means that 3 women have died today. Just today, 3 lives lost to domestic violence. Domestic violence is tiptoed around a lot because first of all, it's violence, and second of all, it's domestic, which means that it's in your home, which means that your lover, your boyfriend, or your husband is the one who's attacking you. That is really hard to accept for women because that means that the person that they love the most and they think they care about the most is the one who's doing the damage to them. 5 million women each year in the United States are domestically abused by their husbands or boyfriends. And 1 in 4 women will experience severe domestic violence in their lifetime. That is an astonishing number considering that is 25% of the female population. Although when you hear domestic violence you usually think about women, it can also happen to men. When you hear the word domestic violence or domestic abuse, you automatically think of a picture of a big man beating his frail wife. And this, in many cases, is not true. Sometimes the wife is the one who is attacking the husband. Now, this, obviously, in 2015, sounds kind of crazy, and that is why most men who undergo domestic violence are embarrassed or don't tell anyone that they are being domestically abused. 1 in 7 men will be severely domestically abused in their lifetimes. Now, this is a smaller number than the amount of women, but that is a pretty large number for the male population, and it should not go unnoticed. Both men and women both experience domestic violence, but what most people don't think about is the children in this situation. With Sil, she had a child that she was raising, and her boyfriend still beat her. This means that her child had to experience this. Her child had to watch her mother being beaten, and they are scarred for life with this image of their parent being beaten. This will help them to go on do illegal acts, anything that's wrong, basically, and they will also probably get bad grades in school, studies have shown, and they will also join gangs and different things that will not be beneficial to their experience in life. So domestic violence is obviously an issue. I've established that multiple times. But one thing that is even less unspoken than domestic abuse is sexual abuse. Now, sexual abuse is technically a part of domestic abuse, but it is a big part that most people do not talk about. This is due to the fact that it is once again domestic abuse, so it's your partner that is harming you, but it's sexual, which means that they are either forcing themselves upon you or just doing anything of a sexual nature that you do not want. And this happens a lot actually, and it can affect women in multiple ways that are just terrible, and they will scar them for life. So as we get on the topic of sexual assault and sexual violence and sexual abuse, let's talk about what I'm wearing today. Okay, so most people when they saw me walking up into TED wearing this outfit, they probably thought either A, he was not prepared for this talk. He didn't think ahead of time and he didn't pack clothes. Or you thought, wow, this boy is wearing a v-neck and he's wearing short shorts. And he is really revealing, and that's just not necessary because this is a TED Talk. Well, this thought process, the second thought that I mentioned, is really, really bad. Because first of all, this promotes victim shaming, and I will get into that later. But basically that means that you're blaming the victim for what happens because of what they were wearing or what they were doing. And just because someone is wearing revealing clothing, that doesn't mean that they are asking for anything. So the next time you think of that thought, just remember that they are not asking for anything. It is the person who is forcing themselves upon themselves that is asking for something. 1 in 2 women will experience sexual abuse in their lifetimes. That is 50% of women. And in the US, the woman population is about 156 million people. And if you take half of that, that's 78 million women who are experiencing sexual abuse in their lifetimes. That number is way too large. In 2015, this should not be happening as often as it does. And 50% is a number that is just way too large for sexual abuse to be happening to. And 79% of women will experience either sexual abuse or rape before the age of 25. And that is just crazy, crazy. Now, back to the topic of victim shaming. Victim shaming is when anyone, or even a court, blames the victim of rape, sexual assault, or sexual abuse for the abuse or assault, rather than the person who actually commit the crime. This is a terrible practice that has gone on for far too long. Usually, the person who accuses the victim of being the reason that everything is wrong, they usually say that either they were too revealing with their clothes, or they were asking for it, or their body language was confusing. But really, that's all justification for nothing. You are literally saying that it is their fault because they were sending the wrong messages. That is not okay. And that needs to be stopped immediately, because that is the reason why rape is usually not convicted. Rapists are not convicted. And also, that just shows how much we are like third world countries. In some third world countries, you need 4 witnesses to prove rape in a court. And we're in America in 2015. We are a first world country. We should not have victim blamers. We should not have them affecting whether or not a rapist gets put into jail. Domestic violence and sexual abuse are terrible, terrible cycles that repeat and repeat. And if we just don't talk about them, they're going to keep repeating. And that's going to affect more and more people. I know that some of you out here in the audience may or may not be victims of sexual assault, rape, domestic violence, or any of those different things. So I brought the number for the domestic hotline with me tonight because I know that some of you out there, you don't know that there's resources, and you don't know that there's anything wrong with what's happening. And tonight I was just trying to inform you what you can do and what is wrong. You need to identify the issue before you can start treating it. But if anyone out there has identified the issue and wants to know how to treat it, I have the number right here. It is 1-800-799-7233. Once again, it's 1-800-799-7233. You can call that number anytime, and you can report domestic violence or sexual abuse, and it will be reported to the police. Thank you so much for your time.